Thank you, sir.
29.
Again and again.
There you go.
Happy birthday, Jerry.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, man.
You just spend it with all you.
We'll give it a try.
And Jonathan Lang is not going to be here, I don't believe. So are we ready, Spence?
We are all good, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. We'll give it one more minute here. I've got 6:59. Is that Ohio State in the background, Director Sasson?
No, sir, it is not. I'll leave it to your imagination.
I was just hoping for the best.
Just tell you that that picture was taken Saturday afternoon.
Oh, really? Okay, it's 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Janine, please call the roll.
Ms. Hall,
Here.
Mr. Harris,
Here.
Mr. Labutus,
Here.
Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmee,
He's here. He's on mute.
He
Mr.
said
Rapp.
present, but he's
Mr.
muted.
Rapp,
I'm here.
Mr. Barker,
Here.
Mr. Blake,
Here.
Mr. Bub,
Here.
Mr. Fennell.
Here.
We have 9 either present or here this evening. Next on the agenda, we have the invocation. Jeremy, would you like to introduce your guest?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to introduce Pastor Mark Catrick from St. John's. St. John's is down here on in the south end off West National Drive. They've been a real community partner with the South Newark Civic Association since its inception, and just a pleasure to introduce Reverend Catrick to be with us tonight and to pray for our city.
Thank you all for your gracious invitation. Let's pray. Creator God, we thank you for this glorious day after Easter and the many opportunities you've given to share new life and love in the risen Christ. More than 2,000 years ago, your spirit led people of the Hopewell culture here to build a new life with many earthen mounds and enclosures to change and transform this area. And when you moved European Americans to settle here in 1802, your enabling, empowering spirit was with them. You've been here when the first shovels of dirt were dug for the Ohio and Erie Canal, when the Central Ohio Railroad connected Newark west to Columbus, when the Heisey Glass Company started and the arcade was opened. Gracious and giving God, it was you who provided people of all cultures and creeds everything they needed to establish this city. Psalm 107, verse 36, and Hebrews 11:10. And it is you who now entrust those who have been called to the city's council and all who serve with them to envision and seek the new work that is yet to come. Hebrews 13:14. Lord Jesus, we can feel your grace-filled presence with us in this virtual place, this sacred space. We humbly ask your blessings on each one here for all they have done and all they are doing. Give the wisdom, strength, and courage for the living of these days. Keep them and all they hold near and dear to their hearts safe and well. Our God, our help in ages past and our hope for years to come. Embrace these sorrowing servants and the unexpected passing of Police Chief Stephen A. Baum, who now dwells with a great cloud of witnesses in a lasting city built and designed by you. Hebrews 11:10. Let us take comfort in knowing that you are watching over the cities, all the cities in heaven and on earth, and that it is your great desire that no divisions should exist where your people dwell. May we continue to be changed and transformed by the universal love and peace of Jesus Christ, so that, like the indigenous people who settled along the river valleys, all will feel welcome here, safe and secure in your loving arms. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you.
And again, may God be with the Baum family this week. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Does anyone have anything?
President,
Mr. Marmee.
yes, I'd like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Lang.
Motion to excuse Mr. Lang by Mr. Marmee,
Second.
second by Mr. Blake. All those in favor, give me a thumbs up. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That passes. Next, we have the minutes of our March 15th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Labutus,
Second.
second by Mr. Barker.
Me. Yep.
All those in favor, give me a thumbs up. Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have no appointments this evening. We have two reports from standing committees, one from service and one from finance. Without objection, those will be received and filed. We have no reports from city officials this evening. Under communications, we have one from Denison University Outreach, the Camp Keesum flyer and application. We have one from Carolyn Cook on the Sheets gas station on 21st and Mao, and also from Max Sutton, the Max Sutton Law Firm, objections to variances through the BZA for the Sheets project on 21st and Mao. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Next this evening, we have comments from citizens. This is not a debate with council or an argument. This is just your chance to be heard. If there's anyone that would like to speak this first section, if you please turn your camera on now and I'll recognize you one at a time. If you'll just give us your name and address for the record. There is one more time for citizens' comments after the legislation. First, we have Mrs. Smith.
Hi, Rochelle Boland Smith, 237 Violet Court in Newark. I found a couple of interesting items in Saturday's Advocate that I'd like to share. One is a cartoon. It's BC from Mastriani, excuse me for the pronunciation, but Mastriani and Hart. And it says, seldom have we felt so weak in times of greater plight, some without a voice to speak, or worse, the will to fight. Persevere for those who seek, guided by the light. He who lifted up the meek and reminds us of our might. I also found, also noted, a person was listed as homeless, but not as a resident of Newark or anywhere else for that matter. This person was charged with criminal trespass and a few other things. And penalties included $530, 15 days in jail, and minus credited time. This amounts to a hidden societal cost of homelessness. While I am not condoning the theft and that sort of thing, it seems to put this person into a downward spiral. And how do we get out of this poverty cycle, paying off impossible debt with no address, lack of positive choices? In my readings, aside from the Advocate, I have discovered a number of states that are working on solutions that utilize skills in the arts to create self-worth and jobs. One, for example, in Kentucky, works with some companies to train in furniture making and making musical instruments. And they don't necessarily go into those fields afterwards, but it does give them a sense of peace and self-worth. Some others use visual arts and creative upcycling. I did a mecca to one in New York where they did building skills. The other day, I actually saw something on HGTV that actually related to this situation, where they were doing upcycling and artistically, and it was just breathtaking. And that's through Disney. I think that Newark needs to do more than it's doing. We need affordable housing. We need better education. In my experience with working with homeless, a lot of the people, particularly those with disabilities, do not get a full education, which is an outrage, and it leads to their other problems and health issues and that sort of thing. Other communities and other countries have found that providing safe, affordable housing costs a lot less than dealing with its consequences. Additionally, I would like to say that I would like to extend my condolences to the Baum family for their loss. He died much too young. And if possible, I would like to know where we could send our condolences to. Maybe through funeral director or something like that, to send a card or something, because we feel this strongly. Anyway, thank you. And I would love feedback.
Thank you. I'm sure the mayor may know that, but we'll see here. I'm not sure I know where to send condolences, but we'll see if someone knows that. So is there anyone else for this first section?
Spencer, Bill Cost, if I'd be able to get on with video.
Well, we don't
Should
want
be
to,
able now, Bill.
we don't want to see you.
Okay,
Anyway.
thank you.
Oh God, now we have to see you.
Okay, thanks, Don. Bill Cost Jr., 1639 Krebs Court. I just wanted to sign in for a moment, and I want to express my heartfelt sympathy to the family of Steve Baum. Steve was a good friend, and it was an honor to serve with him. This community has lost a truly fine public servant, and we've all lost a good friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to ordinances on the second reading. 21-08, Janine.
Ordinance number 21-08 by Mr. Fennell. An ordinance vacating a 16.5 foot wide alley as shown on the plat of the canal land as recorded in Plat Book 2, page 20 of the Licking County Plat Records. Said alley is located between Market and Canal Streets and between South First and South Second Streets.
You've heard the second reading of 21-08. What is your wish?
President,
Mr. Fennell.
I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-08.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Fennell. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who was that? I'm sorry. Second by Mr. Marmee. Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Is there any discussion on 21-08? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmee,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
21-08 passes 9-0. Next, we move on to ordinances on the first reading, 21-09.
Ordinance number 21-09 by Mr. Rath, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 19 East Street, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of TFR Two-Family Residence District to MFR Multifamily Residence District, zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
21-09 will be referred to the Planning Commission. Now we move on to 21-10.
Ordinance number 21-10 by Mr. Rath, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 774 Hudson Avenue, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of LB Limited Intensity Business District to MB Medium Intensity Business District, zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
And 21-10 will be also referred to the Planning Commission, and then it will be back to council. Next on the first reading, 21-14.
Ordinance number 21-14 by Mr. Rath, an ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances and a resolution as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances, providing for the adoption of new matter in the updated and revised codified ordinances, repealing ordinances and resolutions in conflict therewith, and declaring an emergency.
21-14 is on its first reading, but is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
let me make a motion to adopt 21-14.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Rath,
Second.
Second.
second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 21-14?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
this is a fairly routine ordinance that we do every year. The reason for the emergency clause is to meet publication deadlines.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
21-14 passes 9-0. Moving on, we move on to resolutions on the second reading, 21-13.
Resolution number 21-13 by Mr. Marmy, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the City of Newark to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for an award of fiscal year 2021-2022 funding under the Ohio EMS Training and Equipment Grant Program.
You've heard your second reading of 21-13. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 21-13.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 21-13? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
21-13 passes 9-0. Next on the second reading, we have 21-14.
Resolution number 21-14 by Mr. Marmy, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
Heard your second reading of 21-14. What is your wish?
Mr. President, I make a motion to adopt resolution 21-14.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 21-14? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
21-14 passes 9-0. And finally, on the second reading, we have 21-15.
Resolution number 21-15 by Mr. Rath, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor, I'm sorry. I'm going to start over. Resolution number 21-15 by Mr. Rath, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to sell by internet auction personal property including motor vehicles no longer needed for public use or which are obsolete or unfit for the use for which it was acquired.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of, or the second reading of 21-15. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 21-15.
Motion by Mr. Rath,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 21-15? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmee,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell.
Yes.
21-15 passes 9-0. Finally, tonight, we move on to resolutions on the first reading, 21-18.
Resolution number 21-18, expedite by Mr. Marmee, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
21-18,
Mr. President,
Marmee.
I make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 21-18.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee,
Second.
second by Mr. Rath. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a couple of things that need to be expedited. One is the payout for a termination, and then the other one is for some law enforcement supplies that need to be expedited to make sure that those funds get in the proper place at the right time.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Janine, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Ms. Hall? Ms. Hall?
He's working on it. Unmute yourself, please, Dee. Shake your head.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang? Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to adopt resolution 21-18.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmee,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any other discussion on 21-18? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang? Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Fennell?
Yes.
21-18 passes 9-0. Next on the first reading, we have 21-19.
Resolution number 21-19 by Mr. Marmee, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to apply for funding from the United States Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance under the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Program.
21-19 will be held for 2 weeks until our next meeting, April the 19th. And finally, tonight, we have 21-20.
Resolution number 21-20 by Mr. Rath, a resolution authorizing the conveyance of certain real property now owned by the city of Newark, Ohio to Newark Development Partners as its agent for industrial, commercial, distribution, and research.
And 21-20 will be held for 2 weeks until our next meeting on the 19th of April. Thank you so much for your attention. That concludes our legislation tonight. Next on the agenda, we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard. If you'd like to be heard, please unmute your video so I can see you, and we'll call on you as we go here. We'll start with Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I want to start off by echoing condolences for the family of Steve Baum. This is hard for anyone to go through. It's also our misfortune that we have another funeral to go to. Not one related to COVID directly, although I have my suspicions that it was a case of someone who delayed going to the doctor too long before his cancer was detected. I want to take this opportunity to encourage people, everyone listening, everyone that might be viewing the this later on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel, that regardless of the fact that we do have a pandemic going on and you have to be careful, there are some things that need to be done regardless. Please take care of yourselves. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Cook?
I'd also like to express my condolences on the death of Chief
Could you
Baum.
give me name and address for the record, please?
898 Lake Glow Court, Newark, Ohio. And
Your name?
Caroline Cook.
Thank you.
I hope you've had a chance to read my letter about the Sheetz gas station. I think it's a done deal that we will probably have a Sheetz gas station on Mole and 21st Street. But my biggest concern is that so much happens behind the scenes in Newark, and people are not given knowledge about what's happening. There were a lot of us that showed up at the zoning meeting the other night, and I think had we had a chance to give you our input and give input to the planning commission, that would have been a good thing. The people on the planning commission, I'm asking the mayor, how do these people get their jobs? And how is the community of people that live in the neighborhoods represented on these boards, like the Board of Health, for example? We've had a lot of citizens go to the Board of Health meetings and say we need a needle exchange program. How do these people get on this board? Because we would like to have input. I think the citizens of Newark would like to have input on these boards, the Board of Health, the Board of Transportation, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board. And on the Zoning Board, I asked Jonathan Lang, I said, how do they get? Well, he said they're engineers and they're developers and they're people who have knowledge about developing, but they're not citizens. And I think we need input and we need representation. And it's not fair to the people of Newark to have these things happening behind us and not actually being aware of them. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure the mayor will answer that about the boards, but they are citizens. Yes, they are our citizens. Next, we have Nancy Waylu. Linda, you're next.
Nancy Waylu, 7441 Stewart Road. I just wanted to make an announcement that the Newark Homeless Outreach, in partnership with the Licking County Health Department, we are doing a COVID vaccine clinic this Saturday at the Outreach on East Main from 12 to 1:30. The health department, Chad Brown has said he will be bringing 100 doses. So if you could please pass that on to your constituents. It's for anybody and everybody, and we will be doing it on site at the Outreach. Thank you.
You said that's any age, right?
Say again?
Any age, right? There's no age restriction.
I get 16 and up, I assume.
Sure.
Yeah, whatever the health department's guidelines are, because they're the ones administering the vaccines.
Very good.
We do not know which vaccine it will be. I don't even know if Chad Brown knows yet, because they just get them in weekly.
Sure.
It seems like they're getting a lot of Pfizer, but I don't know. But yeah, please pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Linda Mossholder.
Linda Mossholder, 224 Green Meadow Drive in Newark. I just have a question. I was wondering if the city has received any notification of receipt of the Rescue Act funds and any guidelines. I was wondering if, I know some of the monies have been distributed. I was just wondering if the city has had any notification.
All right. Thank you, Linda. Are you done?
Yes.
And Mrs. Smith, would you like to speak again? Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself.
Rochelle Volan-Smith, 237 Violet Court. I wanted to also mention that there's 2 cleanups coming up in the near future. One for South Newark Civic Association, and they're going to be having a cleanup on April 17th, and Historic Hudson Community Association is having one the following week on the Saturday, the 24th. And I know they're looking for help to get these worthwhile projects done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any city officials this evening? Mr. Hickman.
Yes, sir. Last Tuesday, Chief Baum passed away. I was a young sergeant when he started at the police department. He was a good officer, he's a good friend, and he will be missed. Everyone in the police division is hurting right now, but I think it's important to let you know that there has not been any reduction in service to the citizens of the city of Newark. On behalf of the police division, I would like to thank all of the citizens and the businesses that have reached out to the police department to offer their condolences, to provide food, anything that they could do to help. I'd also like to express our gratitude to all the surrounding agencies who have reached out to us and have offered to take calls for service, direct traffic, do whatever they can do to help us out. In regards to, I think it was Mrs. Smith asked earlier, Brucker and Kishler is in charge of Chief Baum's arrangements. His services are tomorrow. Any condolences they'd like to send to the police department, they can send directly to the police department at 39 South 4th Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hickman. Any other city officials? Okay. The Honorable Law Director Sassen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will pass.
Thank you, Director Sassen. Mayor Hall.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll answer a couple administrative questions there, and then I'll make a couple comments on Steve Baum. Committee appointments, the committees across the city, and of course it's every city or through the county, are made up either by Ohio Revised Code direction or by our own city charter as to the makeup. Sometimes it dictates mandatory citizen voting rights or living in the city limits, which is normally that way. And sometimes it might be a suggestion of an appointment from, say, the county or from a school board, or it depends on the situation in many ways. But many of the appointments are made, they might have a mix of city employees and citizens. Most of them have more citizens. That truly is how the involvement is. And they serve terms, sometimes usually 4 years as an average in many cases. And they get those appointments sometimes through my office. And sometimes it requires council's voice vote. They've done it on council night when that person, either their appointment or their reappointment sometimes comes up, it'll be that way. So we are always open for input as city officials. It's a 51,000 person town that you're never going to make everyone happy. And but we do are custodians of the financial condition of the city and how it moves forward. And it's important that we are able to maintain that in certain ways. So anyways, input is always suggested, always welcome. Hence 2 parts of citizens' comments too. And we take everything that everybody sends in and takes it to heart, and we read it and go through it, and then we have to make decisions. So again, the committee appointments are that way. The American Rescue Act that was passed, I'm unaware of anyone receiving money from that yet. We have not. And in fact, we are anxious to get direction from the U.S. Treasury. That's who makes the fine print rules and who did last year. So we work hard through them and through the Ohio Municipal League to get that input. And we have not received that, but as you are, we're anxious to see what the guidelines will be. I believe, I do know that we're going to have till the end of 2024 to spend it. And I do know that it's whatever, we'll get half of our funds whenever we do get them, and 12 months later, we'll get the other half. So that's as much. It took 10.5 hours for Congress to read that bill. I breezed through it, not all, pages, obviously, the ones that tried to pertain to us, but that isn't really the implementation of it. That's done by the U.S. Treasury. So we are anxious and to know how that's going to help in the community and help out and what the rules and guidelines are. So as soon as that gets out, we'll push that out in many ways. Director Hickman spoke about Steve passing. It's been a tough week for everyone in the community, in the city, and of course in the police department. Director Baum started in 1993 with the police department, built a lot of relationships and grew up through the ranks. Obviously, he was on our team as the safety director for a few years on my team, and then he was back over to police chief. So he made a lot of relationships in the Heath and Newark communities. He will be sorely missed. As Director Hickman did say, if you send anything to the family of Stephen Baum and send it to 39 South 4th to NPD, send it to City Hall, we'll all get it to them. Absolutely. We've been with the family. Director Hickman and I have been working well with them in the last week. I just left them a little bit ago, as a matter of fact, and they are very thankful for the outpouring in this community and what everyone has done. It's helped the family quite a bit for that big loss that they've suffered all of a sudden. So with that being said, Chief Baum was a organ recipient. He did receive an organ a few years back, and he also donated organs, donated tissue, and he was a donor this week. So that was an important part of his life, and it was an important part in his passing. His services are tomorrow. They will be at the Heath Church of Christ, 1331 Chapel Way in Heath, Ohio, which is out near Kaiser Aluminum. The family will receive people from 11 to 2:30. The service is at 3 o'clock. There will not be a procession after that. The police services will be done in the parking lot at the church. If you're unable to attend, it will be broadcast on the NPD, Newark Police Department's Facebook page, starting at 3 o'clock. Again, I want to echo the thank you too for all the surrounding communities, law enforcement. They've really stepped up, and during especially the night of the passing and on, and they've helped everybody kind of get through this. So with that, again, thank you. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Hall.
Thank you. I will pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to send my thoughts and prayers to Steve Baum's family. I thought Steve was a great police chief. Every time I had a question, he got back with me ASAP, gave me an answer. Sometimes I didn't like the answer, but he gave me an answer. And so my thoughts and prayers are with them. Also, I want to let everybody know on May the 8th will be the East End cleanup, and the dumpsters will be at Carson Elementary. And I think they're going to do the whole East End this year. So those that live out this way can take full advantage of that. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Labutus.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to pass on my condolences to the Baum family. That was obviously not the news I was expecting last Tuesday when I had heard. And so family's been on my mind all week. And he was a great safety director, great police chief, had many conversations with him. And as Mr. Harris kind of alluded to, he would always give you an answer. Wasn't always the answer you wanted to hear, but it was the answer you needed to hear. And that was something that I always appreciated about him. And I will sorely miss him. With that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Labutus. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a finance committee meeting. I too want to extend my further condolences to the entire Baum family, and also the family of the Newark Police Department, because I know what a tight-knit group that is. And when they lose one of their own, it's it's a tough situation, and they're really close. And so my condolences go out to the Newark Police Department also. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Mr. Rath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll call a service committee meeting for 2 weeks. And also I want to express my condolences to the Baum family as well as Newark Police Department. Steve will absolutely be missed and remembered for a very long time. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, my sincere condolences to Steve's family, extended family, and the police department. It was not the phone call that I was expecting last Tuesday night. I remember very, very vividly my first week as a new member of this council. I had lunch with Steve and learned really fast that he didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. He would tell me what I needed to hear and what was most important to keep our citizens safe and to do the job that he was charged to do. And it is a huge loss for not just our police department and our community, but Licking County as a whole. We all know that Steve served in a auxiliary position with the Heath Police Department, so my condolences are there as well. And it's just a horrible loss for all of us. And with that, Mr. President, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to offer my condolences to the Baum family and prayers to all of his loved ones. Just a tragic situation, and just hope God seeks the peace that they're looking for. I do want to give an update regarding some work that I've been able to do over the last month. We're all aware of the drug addiction crisis in our city. Drug addiction and mental health are two barriers that prevent individuals from reaching their full potential. For the past month, I've had some very creative and courageous conversations with community leaders with a focus on being proactive and engaging concerns before they become escalated. Just developing relationships on how we can balance the needs of residents and neighbors to feel safe in their homes and the needs of those individuals that are suffering from those barriers. It's my hope that we can reduce certain types of emergency calls and reduce the workload on our safety forces. Both the police and the fire have found themselves handling situations that quite simply could be handled best by a professional social worker. We also know from a recent news article that our jail is not holding individuals with minor offenses anymore during the health pandemic. And as we listened a month ago to business owners, and I've listened to residents, we can hear from them that many times neighborhoods have quote unquote repeat offenders causing concerns in neighborhoods. These individuals are known people, and we need a better way to engage neighborhoods to proactively address issues of addiction and mental health. Kate St. James is the CEO and president of Behavioral Healthcare Partners. Kate is an outstanding leader in our community, and her staff and BHP are really a top-notch group. And BHP is our community's agency with a mission to provide a holistic mental health and addiction services. And I'm excited to say that Kate and I have been meeting with community leaders to coordinate partnerships that will allow BHP to do direct neighborhood outreach into those neighborhoods that we know need help most in need. For the neighborhoods that are suffering the most in dealing with the disease of addiction and mental health concerns, we're seeking to have a point person that will be engaging and reach out not only to the people directly suffering, but also work with residents and business owners to uplift neighborhoods. And because again, many times the residents and the business owners know the individuals that need that help. We believe this will assist in being preventive and assist in identifying issues before they get to the point of needing to call our police. And the goal is to really de-escalate issues before they become bothersome. And Kate and I have already met with Service Director David Rhodes. We have more meetings this week and next week with some key community leaders. And in due time, we'll be able to make a full announcement to list our community partners and people of goodwill that want to see this work in our neighborhoods. So far, conversations have been positive and very good, and just looking to make our lives better for those that are personally in need, but equally important to be able to give our residents a direct answer of help when they call and want intervention. And so we'll have more information to come in the coming weeks. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Bub.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a personnel committee meeting for 2 weeks from tonight. And I too want to pass on my sympathy to the Baum family. I got to know Steve over the years and really came to respect him. It's sad because he was just really doing a great job as police chief, and he was just getting started. So it's just a sad scenario for all those involved. So with that, I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bub. And Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's clear from all of the comments and heartfelt condolences and stories that we've heard tonight about Chief Baum that he definitely lived his life to the fullest, and that he will have a lasting impact on the city of Newark. And I just want to also add my condolences to his family for this unimaginable loss that they're going through right now. And to the police, New York City Police, for continuing to carry on and keep our city safe, even though they must be mourning, and this is an incredibly difficult time for them as well. So my heart goes out to the city and to his family for this untimely passing. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Fennell. I don't know what I can add, except it's certainly been a tough week for all of us, that's for sure. I've known Steve quite a while. Steve Baum, I'd say, was a force. There wasn't any doubt you knew where he stood. If you asked him a question, you got the answer. And again, like some of you have said, it might not be the answer you wanted, but it was his answer, and it was the right answer most all the time. I really can't add much to that, except, may God be with the Baum family this week and this tomorrow, especially in the weeks to come. It's going to be tough. He was way too young, way too young. With that, our next committee will be April 19th at 5:45. Full council will be that same evening at 7. I'm thinking about going back to a regular council meeting. Haven't made that decision yet. I'm going to see what the numbers look like these next couple weeks, but I would say there's a good chance we'll be back in council on the 19th, as long as council chambers is ready. And I believe Mr. Rhodes has said they will be. So I'll keep you updated on that. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Bub, second by Mr. Labutus. All those in favor, give me a thumbs up. All those opposed. Thank you for hanging in there with us